Okay, for that, after that long break, okay, so let us continue. So, like I said, I'm doing the next two, so the source sheets are in the back. Tehillim and Mishlei. Tehillim is timeless songs. Mishlei is polemical poetry, both in the back. Okay, so I, first of all, am amazed that there are people who have been here since the beginning. So kol hakavod to you. So for those of you who have been here since the beginning, we have done Torah, we've done Nevi'im. Now we're on the home stretch, sort of. Tuvim now. So I get to start the first two. In Tuvim. Apology in advance. It has been hard, some of these books. It is about to get harder because we have left narrative for a bit. And we are moving on to non-narrative parts of Tanach, not stories. So first book in Tehillim, in Tuvim is Tehillim. Thank you to Maris Sosnovich for dedicating for Refuah Shlema for Baruch ben Zenya. Okay, so Tehillim. Tehillim is one of those books which we know a lot about and we know absolutely nothing about at the same time. 150 chapters. It rivals in length Chumash. It is Chumash, Tehillim, and Divrei Yamim, according to the Gemara, all within 8 psukim of each other in length. 5,888 plus 8 minus 8, fine. Long book. First question, okay. It's a book of poetry, a book of songs, book of praises, probably. Who wrote this book? So I have a teacher of mine, right, Jeremy Weeder, who liked saying, he has a PhD in Talmud, and he likes saying, Masha asar lanu Bible criticism, hitir lanu Talmud criticism, right? What is forbidden to us in Bible criticism, meaning to say that there are multiple authors. A Chumash is permitted when you're talking about the Talmud, which has multiple authors. But the same thing goes for Tehillim. Masha asar lanu Bible criticism, hitir lanu Tehillim criticism, as it were. The Gemara, in source number 1, claims that Tehillim is written by 10 authors. So the Gemara says, Umik Davan, who wrote all these books of Tanach? So David katav sefer Tehillim al yidei asara zkenim. David compiled the chapters of Tehillim, but they were written by 10 different authors. Who are they? So, Adam Arishon, the first person, Adam, which according to the Gemara wrote at least the 92nd chapter of Tehillim, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat. Al-Yidei Malkitzedek. Malkitzedek, the king of Shalem, who meets Avraham in Breshit. Al-Yidei Moshe, the prophet of all prophets. Al-Yidei Heman, Al-Yidei Yedutun, Al-Yidei Asaf, Al-Yidei Shlosha B'nei Korach. David katav sefer Tehillim al yidei asara zkenim. So the Gemara says, what about Elechshav Nami Eitan Ezrachi? Why do you suffice with the 10 that you counted? What about Eitan Ezrachi, who also is mentioned in Tehillim? So Amar Rav Eitan Ezrachi zeu Avraham. So it's very simple. That is Avraham. So Avraham is already counted. K'tiv Hacha, and then he proves it. Eitan Ezrachi, K'tiv Hatam, Meir Mimizrach Tzedek, Kachashiv Moshe, Kachashiv Heman. Where it says, okay, but you counted Moshe and Heman. Rav Heman zem Moshe, and some people think Heman is Moshe. K'tiv Hacha Heman K'tiv Hatam B'chol Beit Nemanu. So he said Trey Heman Havu. Maybe not. There was sometimes Moshe's Heman, but there's another Heman. Whoever it is, according to the Gemara, there are 10 authors of Tehillim, and they span the first human being, Adam Harishon, Adam, Avraham, Malkitzedek, several Leviim who sang in the Beit HaMikdash, David obviously himself. And that is Tehillim. Now, there is strong evidence for the fact that David did not write all of Tehillim. There's also evidence in Tehillim that David wasn't the final editor of Tehillim. If you look at the end, so Tehillim, like Chumash, is divided into 5 books. the end of book 2, which is chapter 72, this is source number 2. The Gemara, we'll see the Gemara in a moment. The pasuk says, "Kalut Tfilot David ben Yishai." At this point, ends the prayers of David, which makes it sound like only the first 72 of 150 chapters David was the writer of. But the Gemara in number 3 pushes back on this and quotes Rabbi Meir, Tanya Rabbi Meir Omer Kol Tushbachot Ha'amorot B'Sefer Tehillim Kulan David Amaran. All praises in the book of Psalms were recited by David. Shne'amar Kalu Tfilot David ben Yishai Al Tikre Kalu Ela Kol Elu. Don't read the Kalu, meaning here ends the books of David. Rather Kol Elu. All chapters of Tehillim are written by David. Now, when you read that line, so you might think that this Gemara has a varying tradition. Namely, the Gemara in Baba Batra felt that there were 10 authors to the book of Tehillim, and this Gemara says Kol Elu, all of the books, all of the praises of David. So if you look at Rashi in number 5, or the Rashbam in 6, they both limit this, and they say no one thought that all of it was written by David. They either think, Rashi says all of the chapters which start with the word tefillah, that start with the word prayer, were David's, but other ones were written by the other 9 authors of Tehillim. The Rashbam understands it, that all the historical chapters in Tehillim, like this chapter which David wrote when he was fleeing his son Avshalom, Bevarchom Ibnei Avshalom, so all those are by David. But Rashi and the Rashbam assume that there is a consensus in Chazal that there were 10 authors to Tehillim, and David is the final editor of Tehillim. However, if you look at Reb Sadia Gaon in his Hakdamot, he has 3 Hakdamot to Sefer Tehillim, written in Arabic, but translated by Rabbi Yosef Kafach. He has a very ambitious position. If you want to see more on it, there is an excellent book by Uriel Simon, 4 Approaches to Sefer Tehillim. Rav Sadia Gaon had a unique position. He felt, no, he argued with Chazal. He said all 150 chapters are written by David. He denies the tradition of Chazal that there are multiple authors. He goes farther. He actually claims that the praises of Tehillim are not praises at all. He amazingly claims that Tehillim is a second Chumash, which is primarily legal, which is very hard if you've ever read through Tehillim, which is filled with praises. He argues that the praises of God are only there to contextualize the commands, namely to remind you why it is that you're supposed to listen to God. But primarily Tehillim is a new book of law and exhortation, all written by David. How does he deal with the fact that certain chapters say things like Tfilah Moshe Isha Elokim? So he says it means a prayer of David, who was a descendant of Moshe. He has some very creative reads to defend this position. However, as Uriel Simon notes, the reason that he likely said that was because he was polemicizing against the Karaites, who felt that not only was Tehillim a book of prayer, it was the only book that could be used for prayer, and therefore felt that rabbinic prayers were invalid, and therefore he had a tendency in other positions to go to the opposite extreme of the Karaites, and therefore he argued and said, no, this was only written by, I forgot the most extreme part. Not only is it a book of exhortation, not only is it only by David, it's not really by David at all. He said it was really written by God. It's a book of prophecy by God. It sounds like prayer, it's not true. It's God speaking in a way that sort of sounds like prayer, but it's really command. Now, this, again, seems to be a very extreme position to push back on the Karaites, but, and Simon does not note this, nor, to be fair, does Rav Sadia Gaon, this could just be a read of Rabbi Meir, namely, Kol Elu, all of them are written by David, meaning this is a tradition denying that there were multiple authors. It could be that at least that part of Sadia's position was from this Gemara, I don't know. But, at any rate, besides for this possible position in Rabbi Meir, the consensus position in Chazal is that Tehillim are written by multiple authors, 10 authors, and compiled by David. Now, The fact that it's written by multiple authors seems obvious. You read the book, some are attributed to David, some are Moshe, some are Bnei Korach. Right? Each of them, they have, in the beginning, they have little titles, who wrote them. Some of them are anonymous, but many of them say who they're written by, and there are different authors who are there. There is a problem, however, that some of the books, some of the chapters, like number 137, number 7 here, is Al Naharot Bavel, right about, Bavel, right about the morning after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and the exile, which is way after David is dead, right? If you don't need this, but you want to use this? Here, right? Monarchy. David is at the beginning of the green, and at the end of the green, around the blue, is when you get Bavel. So, many of those who want to defend Chazal's position in the Gemara say it is a prophetic chapter. However, there are other voices. If you look, for example, in number 8, there is a position, Kohelet Rabbah, that the 10th author of Tehillim is, if you look at the last line, is Ezra, which would push it all the way to the period of the rebuilding of Jerusalem after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash 70 years later. Now, if that's the case, right, this is firmly in the blue. If you have this, the blue, right? So this author, and there are positions throughout the ages who felt that this was true. If you look in the commentary of Ramoshe Ibn Shekatila on Tehillim, if you look in the parish of the Maharzu, if you look in others, they take this position as well, that there are more than 10 authors, and some of Tehillim is actually written in the period of the rebuilding of Jerusalem. So that's for authorship, right? We have the extreme position of Sajigon, possibly the Gemara, the position of Rabbi Meir, that it's all David, possibly according to Sajigon, really from God, it's prophecy. Majority position is that this is not prophecy, it's written by human beings, and a collection of them at that. The position of the Gemara in Bava Basra is that it is 10 people finishing with David. The position of the Kohelet Rabbah and others is that no, some of the authors even lived later in the period of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. That's to authorship. The second point to make about Tehillim, and this I won't read it inside, but the Gemara notes in number 9 that some of them were written as individual tefillot, some were written as communal tefillot, some were written, meant to be communicated as an individual, some on behalf of the community, responsively. The Gemara tries to figure out which are which, but that's the second point, that Tehillim is not just written by many authors, it's written for different types of context. Some were used in the Beit HaMikdash, some were personal tefillot, some were communal tefillot, as you go through Tehillim. Okay. Tehillim is the one where authorship takes up the longest part. That's just the way it is. But now, we have 18 minutes left. So, theme of Tehillim. How do I summarize 150 chapters in 18 minutes? So I'm going to give you one thesis that hopefully will take you through Tehillim. In 10, I gave you the introduction to a series in Tehillim by Rabbi Avi Baumol, who I think helps here, but I'll say it outside. In general, when we learn Tanach, there are at least two ways of learning Tanach. One is on the level of Pshat, the other is Drash. Now, what is the difference between Pshat and Drash? Now, there are many different ways of explaining it. As many people like saying, Pshat is what I think, Drash is what you think. I like his interpretation for our purposes. Pshat is what the chapter meant to the author. Drash is what it can mean to me. Meaning it doesn't mean it's not just homiletics. But drash, what is a homiletic? What is a drasha? When a rabbi gives a drasha, sometimes he's saying pshat. Sometimes he is not making a midrashic claim not grounded in the text. Sometimes he's saying something which is grounded in the text. But he's bringing it up to date. He's explaining how it is relevant in your life. Now, sometimes he's not saying pshat. He's not trying to connect to the original meaning. He's using the verses as a springboard to say something meaningful. But whether he's saying the original meaning of the psukim or not, the art of drasha, the art of sermonizing, is the art of taking Torah and not just asking the question. I know, right, Churchino tried to end every share this way. But the act of drash, even if you are being doresh pshat, is to ask, how does this connect to me? Or, to quote one of my teachers, Rabbi Asaf Bednarsh, sometimes the drash of the drash is omek pshuto shel mikra. Meaning sometimes if you ask the question on someone's interpretation of how they're connecting it to them, you'll realize that that's really what the text is getting at. Meaning, if you're reading the Aseret HaDibrot, pshat, sure, is what do these laws mean? But the Aseret HaDibrot are supposed to speak to you. So, if you spend time explaining how it speaks to you, you are accomplishing what God wanted you to do, even if you're going beyond merely the interpretation of the words in front of you. In Tehillim, drash is pshat. What do I mean drash is pshat? So this comes to my title, and this is to summarize it all. Tehillim is, in my opinion, timely, timeless songs. Meaning, when David wrote a Mizmor Bevarcho Mipnei Avshalom, why did he bother collecting it in the work of Tehillim, if its only meaning was for himself as he fled from his son Avshalom? If David wrote it, and David collected it, David meant for it to be used for someone who was not fleeing his child in a political coup. Which means that the very fact that the book of Tehillim exists as an eternal work means that the authors meant for you to use them as it was meaningful to you. They didn't mean for you to limit it to how they used it, because then it would be worthless as a book of tefillot. If we don't accept Rav Sajagon, which most commentaries don't, and we say Tehillim is a book of prayer and a book of praise, if those words were written down for eternity, it must mean that David knew that their poetic and religious import could inspire others, and people could find themselves in those words when they needed to turn to God in distress. So in Tehillim, there is no distinction between pshat and drash. Pshat is the timely interpretation, is what did it mean when it was written. Drash is what is it about these poetic words that are meant to speak to every situation. That's what Tehillim is. That's my general thesis. I can't go through 150 books. But let's take that example because it's perhaps the most striking. Number 11. Mizmor LeDavid Bivarcho Mipnei Avshalom Beno. It starts off, this was the song of David, the Psalm of David, when he fled from Avshalom, his son. It is timely. This is what, let's take it at face value. This is what David said when he fled his son. But look at Pasuk Bet. Adonai, ma rabut sarai, rabim kamim alai. God, O Lord, my foes are so many. Many are those who attack me. If you cut off the first pasuk, is it pshat or drash if someone who is fighting a battle in 2017 says that pasuk? And the answer is, it's not drash. That pasuk is as meaningful for David as it is for someone who has enemies attacking him now. And if David commemorated his feelings of anguish and the words he used to turn to God when he was in pain, it's because he knew that those words would inspire someone facing enemies in 2017. He continues, Rabim omrim lenafshi, ein yeshuata lo ve'elohim sela, v'ata Adonai magen badi, kvodim erim rashi. You, God, you are my shield. You raise up my honor. Kol el Adonai yekra, v'ya'aneni meharkat shosela. My voice calls out to God, and he responded from his holy mountain, Selah. I mean, what in those verses cannot, without darshaning, without adding homiletic. What about those words cannot or should not be used by a modern person who feels that that speaks to him? And therefore, I think that that's what Tehillim is. Yes, many of them are timely. They were tied to specific historical events. But the fact that we canonize this book of Tefillot, of 10 or more authors throughout the eras, is because we understand that religious experience is at some level common to humanity throughout history, throughout time, throughout different experiences. And that's the beauty of Sefer Tehillim. A few other points. What is it that makes Tehillim so powerful? So, Robert Alter, who is one of the master literary scholars of Tanach in the academic world, makes a simple but powerful point. Some books, some authors, are known as excellent writers because their vocabulary is excellent. Their diction is impeccable. You know when you listen to them that they have 3 PhDs in English literature. Right? Mori Rabbi was like this. He had a PhD from Harvard in literature, and you knew it when he spoke. The problem with that is that sometimes if you don't have a PhD from Harvard in English literature, guilty as charged, you don't always know the words that he's saying. They sound beautiful. They sound nice. When you look up the words in the dictionary later, you're like, wow, I didn't know a word existed that captured that emotion so perfectly. But when he says it, I don't necessarily know what he's talking about. I remember standing with Rabbi Bednar at one of his shiurim. He said, look, I have a degree from Princeton. I have a decent vocabulary. There were at least 4 words in that shiur. I don't know what they meant. That type of literature may be powerful, but it doesn't speak to the masses over time. Tehillim, which has inspired generations in all religions, this has become the basis of prayer for Jews, for Christians, for Jews of all sects. The reason it can do that is that it has somehow become the paradigm for Western poetry, for religious poetry, but the words are so simple. They're just so simple. They're powerful, but they are not complicated. You look at number 1. He just points. You look at the first Mizmor. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo alach b'atzad rishayim v'derech chata'im lo amad v'moshav leitzim lo yashav. Happy is the man who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Kiyim b'torah Adonai chetzo v'torato yegeh yom v'layla. Rather, the teaching of the Lord is his delight, and he studies that teaching day and night. Vaya ke'etz shatul al palgei mayim asher perio yitain bito v'aleu lo yibol v'chol asher yaseh yatzliach. He is like a tree planted beside streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whatever it produces thrives. Lo chena rishayim, kim kemotz asher tidvenu haruach. Not so the wicked, rather they're like chaff that the wind blows away. Al kein lo yukumu rishayim b'mishpat, v'chateim b'adat tzadikim. Therefore the wicked will not survive judgment, nor will sinners in the assembly of the righteous. Ki yodeh Adonai derech tzadikim v'derech rishayim tovei. For the Lord cherishes the ways of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. Nothing so complicated about that. Simple images, simple words. And yet, you read it and you walk away feeling, wow, it is a good thing to be a good person. Thank you, God, for giving me guidance in life. I'm happy. I'm happy that I have a path to follow that I think is moral and just and righteous. It's simple. It's powerful. It speaks to everybody. Tehillim, while it does often use simple language, also use metaphors. And the metaphors are powerful and become, I don't like using the word famous, but famous. Right? Psalm 23, Tehillim Chav Gimel, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Echzar. A psalm of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. It's a simple metaphor. Powerful metaphor. In fact, it's a beautiful, if you follow it, I'll just make a point as you go through it quickly. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to water in places of repose, and you just feel yourself. You're an animal, right? Sometimes we just feel we don't know what to do. We're just simple sheep following our shepherd. But if you continue, skip to hey for a moment. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzarerai. You set up your table, you spread a table for me in full view of my enemies, without even noticing. What happened? You were a sheep being led by your shepherd. Who are you by Pasuk Hey? You're a human being. Tehillim doesn't just use metaphors, it mixes metaphors. It leads you in and out of metaphors. And you start as a sheep, but as you gain confidence because God leads you, you become a person. And God changes accordingly. He was a shepherd leading you, now he's a host setting your table. So Tehillim is timely and timeless. It uses simple languages and it uses metaphors. It mixes metaphors to help you change experiences as you read through the verses. Tehillim also recognizes that it's important that there be a book of praise that can be used by people in all times, because praise isn't just something we want to do, it's something we have to do. We tend to think that in the time of the temple, the time of the Beit Midrash, when people needed to thank God, they would bring a korban, they'd bring a sacrifice. But if you look at number 14, Tehillim is explicit that part of your debt to God when he's good to you is praising him. This is part of Hallel. Ma shiv ladonai kol tagmulu eloi. How can I repay the Lord for all his bounties is to me? Kos tishtu yeshuot esav v'shem Adonai akra. Part of the debt to God isn't just the sacrifice, it's the praises you say when you bring it. Nidarai ladonai ashalem negdano l'cholamo. My vows to God I shall fulfill. The vow isn't just the korban, the praise is part of it. So you need a go-to book with praises. If you can't find the right words, here's 150 chapters which you can choose from. Find the one that helps express the experience that you're feeling right now. Okay, I've given you a few other, I knew I wouldn't get through all of these, but I've given you a few other chapters of Tehillim here. I gave you chapter 92, which, as I said, is what they attribute to Adam HaRishon, to the first human being. But let me wrap up without getting into it. That's okay. So Tehillim, like I said, hard to sum up in 30 minutes. It's 150 chapters of the most famous poetry ever written. But whether it's written by one author, 10 authors, or more, the key, I think, to Tehillim, as I said, is to recognize that it's both timely and timeless. While in other books, it's important to understand what it meant to the author. It makes sense that Shmuel, Melachim, whatever, which has a narrative to it, there's a pshat, there's a narrative, there's a story you got to understand. Then you can ask the questions, what does it mean to me? In Tehillim, there is no gap between pshat and drash, because the very fact that it was worth commemorating these poems that people wrote in their moments of despair, or perhaps afterwards as a formalized prayer when they're imagining what they felt like then. The fact that those get eternalized in the book of Tehillim tells you that that's the pshat, that they're meant to be timely and timeless, and therefore you're supposed to find yourself in those words. And that's why, as Alter says, the words, as famous as they are usually simple, because they're meant to speak to all people at all times. But it doesn't suffice just with words. It uses metaphor, because sometimes we need to imagine certain experiences to get ourselves to feel things. The metaphors mix to help us feel the complexity of our own experiences. And the last point which I made here, which is that this isn't just an opportunity that we have to use the praises which were written by those before us. As the Tehillim says in several places, such as in Kuftet Zayin, part of our debt, part of our obligation as religious people is when we feel God has done good to us, is to find a way of praising him. And don't think that it was once we praised him, we thanked him with karbanot, and now we can only suffice with words. As Tehillim itself tells you, it was always true that the way that we related to God, the way we thanked him, were with these words. That's part of your neder, that's part of our commitment, and therefore David, and possibly some others, collected these 150 books of timely, timeless songs that we can turn to when we're in distress, when we're elated, when we need a book which can capture the historical religious experience so we can find the words to express our own. With that, we'll take a 30-second break so I can stop this and then start Mishlei. If you don't have the source sheets, they're in the back. Please.